What's up guys? I got a quick video for you. I'm sorry this took so long to come out. I wanted to wait until my engine was torn apart to make this video. My engine builder said that he was going to be taking my engine apart sometime last week, and I asked for an update. When he did, I never got an update, but I don't want to bother him. So I'm going to talk about the conclusions that we came to just from what we saw and what we know about what happened. But first, it really bothers me that I'm giving KATs a bad rep when none of these problems have been the engine's fault. Before we talk about what just recently happened, I just kind of want to run through all the problems that I've had in the past. Where I took my engine originally to get built was by a shop that builds like V8s for like off-road stuff, like short course trucks or like oval track cars, stuff like that. A place that doesn't really probably do a lot of like four-cylinder stuff or like smaller engines. I had Tomei oversized valves that I wanted them to put in my head, and those valves work with the normal valve guide, and they took one of my valve guides out and told me that I needed bigger ones and that those wouldn't work with my valves. They, I guess, said that they could get me the right sized valve guides or whatever. So I said, okay, let's do that. Basically a year went by of me being like, hey, what's up? No, they're still on back order, whatever. That was the year 2020, COVID. So I was like, okay, whatever. Then at the beginning of 2021, I was like, all right, I kind of need my engine back. I'll take it somewhere else. I'll put stock valves in it. I don't know. I took it to a machine shop in town. They put my valves in and I put the motor all together, ran it, started knocking right away. What had happened was those valve guides are not reusable. It is a one-time thing, and they took it out and put it back in. It had a crack in it, and when I started my engine up, a big piece of it broke off and fell into my cylinder. It got smashed against like the outer edge of the piston and the head. That made the piston rock. Like if it was on this side, it was hitting it and making the piston rock. That just ever so kissed two of my valves, and when it was hitting that, it also wore out the bearing, and that's what caused the rod knock. You got to be really careful what machine shops you take your engines to, because some places just do not care, and that was absolutely a case of the machine shop doing a bad job and costing me that engine. After that, I got in touch with Mike from Tier 3, which is the shop that has my engine now and built it the last time. A little bit of background on Mike. He's a really OG KAT guy. He's been building these engines for like 10 years. The KAT that's in his car, it was built originally with the same internals and the same parts and everything like over 10 years ago, and is still going, has no problems. My engine that just blew up is the first engine that he's ever built that has blown up. But like I said, we'll get to that in a second. He knows all the perfect specs and clearances and tolerances and everything to build a perfect engine, and he built me a perfect engine. He sent those valves, remember when I said that they kissed the piston? He sent them to get double checked by the machine shop that he was using, and they okayed them. One of those valves was the valve that had the guide break, and from it running and idling, it scored the stem on the valve. That kind of like messed up the tolerance in there, and when we started it up for the first time with the new engine that Mike built, it was smoking really bad. And basically what we found out after taking the engine back out and apart was that the valves was not good to go back in the engine, and we were gonna order another set of the oversized Tomei valves that I had, but it actually turns out that right before that they got discontinued, so we couldn't even get replacements. So instead, Mike got me a just stock, clean, virgin KA head, and we just used the OEM valves with upgraded springs, retainers, and cams. Mike took care of all that, put the engine back in the car, took it back to the tuner, and we got it tuned, no problems with the engine. You saw the videos we made last fall. I took it to a test and tune at a skid pad, found some other problems. Car was really hard to drive and drift because of a bad boost leak, bad alignment. There was miscommunication when I got it aligned. Yeah, I drove it to the track, drifted it all day, kinda. I only got like 8 laps, but drove it straight home, pulled it into the garage. It sat all winter, slapped the top mount on, and then I took it back to get tuned again for the top mount, and now we're to present day. I got the car back early that week, and then throughout the week I was just working on it and just buttoning things up, and I planned to go and drive it for the first time with one of my friends, like during the weekend or like Friday night. So that's what we did. Jordan came over, we took it for our first drive. We got into town, I live out in the country. I did one pull, and there was like a weird ticking sound. I wasn't sure if it was like an axle or something. We limped it back to my house. I have Z32, or I had Z32 drum brakes. I'm about to do a hydro in the next video, but the cables for that, I have a aluminum drive shaft, which is a lot thicker, and it also turns out that I had a loose engine mount. My nut was gone completely. So I basically was missing one engine mount. So the drive shaft grabbed onto the handbrake cable and twisted it, and that's what the clicking was. It was the handbrake cable on the U-joint for the drive shaft. I fixed it and I zip tied it up so it wouldn't come back down again. By the time I fixed it, it was dark, and we were gonna actually go drift it again the next day, so I didn't want to be out like too late. So basically we just took it back into town, drove it around for like an hour. I did a pull or two with Jared in it, and I did less than 10 pulls total, only second gear, no third gear, anything like that. I didn't want to risk like breaking it or anything because we were gonna go drift it the next day, which to be honest probably should have tested it a little more because drifting was gonna abuse it a lot more than some pulls, but whatever. That next morning, we drove it about an hour and a half to the skid pad that I like to test my car at. Got there, I did 2 turns, and I heard a knocking sound. At first, I thought it was just my handbrake cable again. Yeah, the handbrake just fucked itself again. And I don't feel like fixing it. You hear that? Yeah, I hear it now. I went to go get backing grid, and then I noticed like when I was clutching in and revving it to like creep forward and stuff that the knock was getting louder. Turned it back around, went back to where I had my stuff, and I filmed this video. I'm not gonna lie, like that really hurt because the car felt so much better now. It sounded sick and literally like instantly got rod knock. I'm super grateful for my friend Alex, who's been towing my car back and forth to Lindgren where I get it tuned. He did me a massive favor by driving all the way down there to pick my car up and trailer it back to me. That day sucked, but it would have been so much more stressful if I did not have someone that I knew would be able to come and trailer my car home for me. So I pulled it out the next weekend. I think I pulled most of it out that weekend, and then I pulled the rest of it out the next weekend. Brought it back to my engine builder, Mike, as soon as possible. While I was at the track, a lot of stuff was going through my head. I was like, what's next? Like, I don't know if I might be on my own with this rebuild. Mike's probably busy, might not want to help me again. Like, well, what do I do? And people will say, just swap like a different engine into it or something. But it's like, I have so much money into so much KA specific stuff that it just would be so much cheaper to just go with the KA again. With all the problems that I've had with my KA, and with everything that I've learned from Mike, I really don't feel comfortable building an engine again because there's just so much stuff that you would never think of that needs to be perfect. Before he could help me, he had to finish one engine he already was building for someone at US Air, and he was doing an NAT on a Mark IV Supra, and those were both projects he had to finish before he could take on mine. I understand. Whatever. I know that my stuff, like I said before, he finished up those other projects not too long ago, and about a week or two ago he told me he was gonna start working on mine, so hopefully it won't be too long. I'm really hoping to have my car back and running for Rio Bash, which will be towards the end of September. I'd like to drive GLD again to test the car before that, but now we'll talk about what we found. In the GoPro footage, you can see my oil pressure dropping. While the car is like sliding around, it's oil slosh. That's what that tells you, it's oil slosh. I already kind of had a feeling that that's what it was. If you didn't know, I have the Excessive oil pan. So Excessive makes an upper pan for the KA that allows you to run an SR20 lower pan. The lower pan that I was running was the Circuit Sports pan, which is basically the same thing as the ISR pan as well. Mike has had that same Excessive pan on his car for a really long time with no problems, but the only difference is he was running the Greddy lower pan. So that's what we're gonna be putting on my engine. I would really not recommend running that pan. It's probably fine for SR, but with the KA, definitely not. And also it's important to point out, my oil was completely full at the top of the dipstick. I checked when we were still at the track after it got rod knock, and the oil was completely full. So it definitely was just sloshing, I guess. And the second thing that we found was there's a freeze plug on the back of the head that Mike put in that has like a piece of solder in the middle. So if the engine ever overheats, that solder melts and drips out, and mine was dripped out. Last year, Mike swapped his Cometic head gasket out for a Tomei head gasket, the same one that I have. He had ran that one Cometic head gasket for years with no problems, and he swapped it out for no reason for the Tomei head gasket, and he blew that head gasket so bad right away. Basically, this is the part where I was like, I wish we could take the engine apart and I could show you pictures and we could know for sure, but I just want to get this video out. I can do that for you and tell you guys what we do find in the next video where it has to do with the engine. So we suspect that my Tomei head gasket was blown. The car was kind of consuming coolant. I kind of thought that I just didn't bleed it good enough, but then the more I thought about it, the more, yeah, I think it was consuming coolant, but it wasn't smoking. It wasn't really giving me any signs of like a blown head gasket aside from when we were at the track after like I did that 2 turns or whatever. Basically, it would get up to temp and then it wouldn't come back down with the car running. So that was like another sign. So that's kind of where we're at. We're gonna put a Greddy lower oil pan on it. We're gonna put a Cometic head gasket on it, and we're just gonna clean the engine out, put some new bearings in it. That should be pretty simple, and get this thing back running as soon as possible. The good that came from this is that we found 2 parts that are bad, and I can warn you guys not to put them on your KATs so you don't blow your KATs up either, like what happened to me. I think that's about it. Basically, KATs are good, machine shops suck. Don't buy ISR SR oil pan, don't buy Circuit Sports SR oil pan, and don't buy Tomei head gasket. Buy a Cometic. That's it. If you want to see more KAT stuff, you want to see me get this thing running again, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.